questions on locomotion and movement. So this is the part 2 video. So moving on to the questions. Select the correct matching of the type of joint with example in the human skeletal system. So the type of joint is given and the example is given. So we have cartilaginous joint between the frontal and parietal bones of the skull, pivot joints between the third and fourth vertebrae of the vertebrae, hinge joint between the humerus and pectoral, gliding joint between the carpals. So we have to choose the correct option. Between the frontal and parietal, we don't have cartilaginous joint, but we have fibrous joints. Between the third and fourth vertebrae, since there is no movement, this is basically fibrous joint. And between the third and fourth vertebrae, it's not pivot joint. There is no movement in the third and fourth vertebrae. Pivot joint is present between the atlas and the axis. That is between the first and second vertebrae. Hinge joint between the humerus and the pectoral. No, it is basically ball and socket. Hinge joint is present in the elbow. So gliding between the carpals, that is in the finger bones. So yes, so option D is correct. The gliding joint is in the carpals. So let's look at the solution. A gliding joint is a common type of synovial joint formed between the bones that meet at flat or nearly flat articular surfaces. Gliding joints allow the bones to glide past one another in any direction along the plane of the joint, up and down, left and right, and diagonally. Many gliding joints are formed in the appendicular skeleton between the carpal bones of the wrist, between the carpals and the metacarpals of the palm, between the tarsal bones of the ankle, and between the tarsals and the metatarsals of the foot. So they have given the location of the gliding joints. So that's what they help in approximation and movement. So the answer is gliding joint between the carpals and also in the tarsals and the metatarsals. So moving on to the next question. The characteristics and an example of synovial joint in humans is: fluid filled between two joints provides cushion, skull bone. Fluid filled synovial cavity between two bones, between atlas and axis. Lymph filled between two bones, limited movement. Gliding joint between carpals. Fluid filled cartilage between two bones, limited movement, knee joint. So let's look at the solution. So here we have the example of a synovial joint. So there are two bones here and there is fluid filled synovial cavity between the bones. So that's what is the synovial joint. So it's an example is a knee joint. So let's look here. Fluid filled synovial cavity between the two bones is also present in atlas and axis. A very common example is a knee joint, so that's why I told you knee joint also. But here fluid cartilage they have given. Fluid cartilage is not present, but fluid filled synovial cavity is present. So moving on to the next question. Select the correct statement with respect to locomotion in humans. Accumulation of uric acid crystals in joints causes inflammation. The vertebral column has 10 thoracic vertebrae. The joint between adjacent vertebrae is fibrous joint. The decreased level of progesterone causes osteoporosis in the old people. So this is called gout. Accumulation of uric acid crystals in the joints is called gout, and this does cause inflammation. This is correct. The vertebral column has 10 thoracic vertebrae. No, the vertebral column does not have 10 thoracic vertebrae. So there are about 11 thoracic vertebrae. So I'm sorry, thoracic vertebrae are 7 in number. 7 in number. So the joint between adjacent vertebrae is fibrous joint. The joint between adjacent vertebrae is fibrous joint. Not necessarily. In different vertebrae there are different joints. The decreased level of progesterone causes osteoporosis in all people. No, the decreased level of estrogen only causes osteoporosis in old people. So vertebral there are the cranial vertebrae are only 7 number, and the vertebral column has 12 thoracic vertebrae. The joint between adjacent vertebrae is cartilaginous, which permits limited movement. Progesterone is secreted by corpus luteum, which supports pregnancy in females. Deposition of uric acid in form of uric crystals in joints are responsible for the inflammation and painful symptoms of gout. So the answer is option A. So moving on to the next question. 3 of the following pair of human skeletal parts are correctly matched with their respective inclusive skeletal category, and one pair is not matched. Identify the non-matching pair. So pair of skeletal parts and their category has been given. Sternum and ribs, axial skeleton. Clavicle and glenoid, pelvic girdle. Humerus and ulna skeleton, appendicular skeleton, and the malleus and stapes, ear ossicle. So we have to find the wrongly matched. Sternum and ribs are a part of the axial skeleton. Axial skeleton comprises this. So we have the upper limb, lower limb, we have the sternum, ribs, and the lower limb also. Clavicle and glenoid. Clavicle comes here, and the glenoid also comes around here in the scapula, glenoid cavity. It is not a part of the pelvic girdle. It's not a part of the pelvic girdle. We have the ilium, ischium in the pelvic girdle, not the clavicle and the glenoid cavity. So the mismatched is option B, clavicle and glenoid in the pelvic girdle. Glenoid cavity is found in pectoral girdle. So moving on to the next question. Which one of the following is correct matching of 3 items and their grouping in the categories? So we have been given a match question again. Ilium, ischium, pubis, coxal bones of the pelvic girdle, actin, myosin, rhodopsin, muscle proteins, cytosine, uracil, thiamine, pyrimidines, malleus, incus, cochlea, ear ossicles. So ilium, ischium, pubis are the coxal bones of pelvic girdle. So this is correct. Actin, myosin, rhodopsin. Actin, myosin, and troponin are muscle proteins, not rhodopsin. Rhodopsin is found in the eye. Cytosine, uracil, and thiamine. So we might get confused. Thiamine, Thymine. Thiamine is the pyrimidine, not thiamine. Thiamine is vitamin. Malleus, incus, and stapes are ear ossicles. Cochlea is a part of the ear and it is not a ear bone. So the correct option is A. The pelvic girdle is formed by 2 innominate bones consisting of 3 separate bones, ilium, ischium, and the pubis. So moving on to the next question. Elbow joint is an example of hinge joint, gliding joint, ball and socket joint, pivot joint. So elbow joint, if you observe the elbow joint, we are able to move the elbow in one direction. We are able to fold it inwards and also outwards. So there is only in one direction. This is like a door. It opens and closes like a door. So this is a hinge joint. So elbow joint is an example of hinge joint. The elbow is a hinge joint. It can open and close like a door. Hinge joint is a form of diarthrosis. So there is free movable joint. That shows that allows angular movement in one plane only. That is, we are able to open and close in only one direction, increasing and decreasing the angle between the bones. Example are elbow joint and the knee joint, etc. So which one of the following items gives rise to the correct total number? Floating ribs in human is 4. Amino acid found in the proteins is 16. Types of diabetes is 3. Cervical vertebrae in humans is 8. So let's look at the solution. So we have the ribs here. Ribs. So there are actually 2 pairs of floating ribs. So there are 4. Amino acids are 20 in number. Types of diabetes is 2. Insipidus and diabetes mellitus. Cervical vertebra here are 7 in number. So the answer is floating ribs are 4 in number. In human, total number of ribs are 14. There are 3 types of which are true ribs that are 7 in number, floating ribs that are 2 in number. Floating ribs are 4 in number, that is 2 pairs, and false ribs are 2 in number. So moving on to the next question. In human body, which one of the following is anatomically correct? The collarbone, that is 3 pairs, salivary gland, that is 1 pair, cranial nerve, that is 10 pair, floating ribs, that is 2 pair. So collarbone is the clavicle. The bone that you feel when you touch the lateral aspect of your neck, you feel the collarbone. So that is only 1 pair. There are only two in number, so 1 pair. Salivary glands, there are 3 salivary glands: submandibular, submaxillary, sublingual, submandibular, and parotid. So there are 3 pairs of major salivary glands. Cranial nerves are 12 in number. So floating ribs are 2 pairs, 4 in number. So the answer is 2 pairs. So 11th and 12th pair are floating ribs. So moving on to the next question, which one of the following pairs is correctly matched? Hinge joint between the vertebrae, gliding joint between the zygapophyses of successive vertebrae, cartilaginous joint which is skull bone, fibrous joint which is between the phalanges. So hinge joint between the vertebrae is wrong. Gliding joint between the zygapophyses of successive vertebrae, it is correct. It is a gliding joint and between the zygapophyses of the successive vertebrae. Cartilaginous bones are not in the skull bones, they are fibrous bones. Fibrous joint between the phalanges, there are saddle joint. It is not a fibrous joint. If it is a fibrous joint, it won't allow the movement between the phalanges. So the answer is option B. Hinge joint is present between the elbow, knee joint, ankle joint and the interphalangeal joints. Gliding joints is between the intercarpal joint, intertarsal joint, sternoclavicular joint and joint of pre and post zygapophyses of adjacent vertebrae. Fibrous joint, that is synarthrosis, joint of the cranium bones between the teeth and the jaw bones. They are mostly immovable. They are movable. Cartilaginous joint, which is amphiarthrosis, joints between the mammalian vertebrae and two innominate bones, which is between the pubic symphysis. So if you remember this whole thing, you will be able to crack all the confusing questions of this bit. So it's better if you note this portion. So moving on to the next question. Acromion process is characteristically found in the pelvic girdle of mammals, pectoral girdle of mammals, skull of frog, sperm of mammals. So let's look at the solution. So we have the pectoral girdle here. We have the scapula and then we have the acromion process from the behind. So this is in the pectoral girdle of mammals, not in the pelvic girdle. So the solution is pectoral girdle. Each half of pectoral girdle has two bones, clavicle and scapula. Spine-like acromion process is attached to the scapula for articulation with the clavicle bone. So moving on to the next question. ATPase enzyme needed for muscle contraction is located in actin, troponin, myosin. Actinin, troponin, myosin, actin. So the actin and actin, troponin, myosin, they are part of the muscle contraction process, but we know myosin is involved in the actual ATPase activity. It only lyses the ATPase and reveals the C-troponin so that there is the binding between the actin and myosin heads. So the answer is myosin. ATPase enzyme is located in the myosin cross bridge heads. Actin forms light or I bands. Actin slides over the myosin during contraction. Troponin protein is involved in establishing connection between the myosin bridges. Actin is involved in muscle contraction. It is also an ATPase which is activated by Ca2 plus and Mg2 plus ions. Hence ATPase enzyme is located in myosin. So moving on to the next question. What will happen if ligaments are cut or broken? Bones will move freely at joints, no movements at the joints, bone will become unfixed, bones will become fixed. We know ligaments are connecting tissue between the bones. So when they connect two bones, they are called ligaments. So if a ligament is cut, so what will happen? The bone will become unfixed. So that is, the bone to bone joint will not be there. Ligaments are specialized connective tissue which connect bone together. Hence, if they are cut or broken, the bone will become unfixed. So moving on to the next question. The joint between human sternum and the ribs in humans is angular joint, fibrous joint, cartilage joint and gliding joint between the sternum and the ribs. So it is basically a cartilaginous joint. There is no need for much of movement. In angular joint, articulating surface of one bone is oval, that is, and convex, and the other is concave. Allows movement only in two directions. Example is wrist. Fibrous joints are unmovable. Example is suture. So as we told before in our other videos, so when we open up the skull, there are sutures here. There is fiber between both these bones, so there is no movement actually. Cartilaginous joints have little more motility due to disc of fibrocartilage between the articular ends. So cartilaginous joints between two vertebrae and all, there is a disc, so there is limited movement. In gliding joints, articulate end of both bones are either flat or curved to allow gliding movement, that is in the fingers. So there are basically plain bones, but they are able to move over one another. So between the sternum and ribs, it is the cartilaginous joint. So which one of the following is a skull bone? Atlas, coracoid, arytenoid and pterygoid. So atlas is a first vertebrae. Coracoid is present in the scapula. Arytenoid process is present in the larynx and it is not part of a bone. So pterygoid bone is a part of the skull bone. So let's look at the picture. So you have the skull here, and when you have broken the zygomatic arch, you can see this is the muscle that they have denoted. So the pterygoid is inside. We are not able to see it. So when the muscles are retracted, you can see the pterygoid bones inside. So pterygoid is a part of the bone. Atlas is the first cervical vertebra. Coracoid is part of pectoral girdle. Pterygoid is a small bone articulated with palatine. Arytenoids are cartilage present at the back of the larynx. So moving on to the next question. The number of bones in hind limbs of man is 14, 30, 24 and 21. So let's look at the picture. So we have the hind limb. So the hind limb involves nearly 1, 2, 3. So when we keep on counting, there are nearly 30 number of bones in the hind limb of man. So let's look at how the number goes. So each hind limb contains 30 bones. How it is: one femur, one patella, one tibia, one fibula, and there are 7 tarsals in the ankle. We have one, it's very small so we can't see here. 7 tarsals in the ankle, 5 metatarsals in the sole and 14 phalanges in the toes. So if we keep adding this, we get 30 number of bones. So there is one femur, one patella, one tibia, one fibula and 7 tarsals in the ankle, 5 metatarsals in the sole and 14 phalanges in the toes. So the total number is 30. Thank you for watching the video.